That's Brother Trucker, and that's Downtown, and you're joining us today on the Fallon Forum, broadcasting from downtown. You got it. Today, among other things, we're going to talk about Steve King, food stamps, breastfeeding. We're going to take a look at this latest poll on marriage equality. We'll take a little look at what's going on with Smithfield in the U.S. Senate, and also Ben Stone will be joining us later to talk about how some phone companies are making a lot of money on the new NSA regulations. Anyway. And, of course, we're going to give you an update on Branstad and his ongoing reign of error. Joining me for the conversation today is Ron Yarnell. Ron is fresh off a July 4th vacation. He's looking all chipper and happy and has a silly Cardinals hat on. Ron, welcome to the show.
It's a very nice Cardinals hat. If I was going to wear any Cardinals hat, this would be the Cardinals hat I would wear. I specifically went to Busch Stadium to see the game and purchase this hat.
Okay, that's an expensive hat when you get to considering gas mileage and probably a hotel room and everything else.
$83 a ticket, too.
Yeah. That is one pricey hat. I'm happy to tell you that the one I have on my head was probably about $10.
You're a model to us all. Then.
Well, a model of fiscal of cheapness, I guess. Hey, so what did you do? Other than that,
we just kind of had a family vacation road trip, really kind of like 1950s, 1960s kind of thing. Just family piles into the car and off we went. And we went to Springfield, Illinois.
I've heard of that place.
Yes, see the Abraham Lincoln stuff. And I will commend to anyone who has an interest in Abraham Lincoln, the museum and presidential library there. Really well done.
Okay.
I like it.
As good as the Ronald Reagan Library?
I haven't been there.
All right.
I probably, given a choice between the two Republican presidents, I probably would enjoy the Lincoln Museum more than the Reagan.
You think?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
So.
Anyway, I'm glad you had a great 4th of July vacation. I stayed in Des Moines, which is okay. I got to see the Pops concert and have some other fun and catch up on some gardening. So all good. Anyway, we are going to talk about food stamps here for a bit. We got more to come, more diversity in this program than I often have. We got, again, Ben Stone joining us later. But the food stamp issue has been a hot topic in Washington as the debate on the Farm Bill continues. And as often is the case, Senator Tom Harkin, making sense, to me at least, he points out, quote, the House Republican caucus mistakenly believes that eliminating the ladder of opportunity for working folks and giving the rich tax cuts will somehow jumpstart our economy. He's very much against the cuts to the food stamp program. And again, in the House, it's a $2 billion cut. I'm unhappy with the Senate. The Senate wants to cut $400 million. The House, $2 billion. Steve King, $16 billion. I mean, Steve King is like so far beyond the craziness that the House already embraces. It's just amazing to me. And his argument that he has heard of someone bailing himself out of jail with his food stamp card, and he's heard of tattoo parlors that take food stamps as payment.
Well, secondhand?
What kind of credibility does he have?
Isn't secondhand anecdotal information just as good as anything else?
I think it's just as bad as secondhand smoke and just as worthless in this case. Yeah,
I have a question though about for one thing, it's not really food stamps. We still call them food stamps, and actually we should call them food debit cards or something. I don't know.
This is called a SNAP program.
Anyway, SNAP program, but. I don't know why people don't realize that the program is a comprehensive ag subsidy. It's a
small business subsidy as well.
It's a retailer subsidy. It's a wholesaler. It's a subsidy all over the food industry.
Yeah.
And somehow people don't. I read in the paper today that there are these store clerks who are upset because, and one said, "Well, I'm kind of upset that someone buys gum or something, and I'm paying for my tax dollars." And I feel like saying, you're a store clerk. You make minimum wage.
I know, yeah.
It's unlikely you pay taxes, and that's because you get the earned income tax credit,
right? Which
is a tax subsidy to you.
Yeah, good point. I hadn't even thought of that, but yeah, good point. So
these people should know that the same people who want to drastically reduce food stamps want to eliminate the earned income tax credit.
Yeah.
because that store clerk needs to shoulder his or her fair share of the public expense.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, it just somehow some people miss these connections again. Maybe because they're so busy trying to get by with a minimum wage job, they don't have time to study
the food stamps,
policy issues.
The food stamps are rather brilliant because no matter what is purchased, it always benefits the seller. It doesn't matter if it's a so-called luxury item. It doesn't matter if it's junk food. It doesn't matter if it's oatmeal. It always benefits the seller, and therefore you would assume the seller's employees.
Well, many of the products that these folks are complaining about, candy, soda pop, various types of junk food, a lot of those products are heavily subsidized as well.
Right.
I mean,
high fructose corn syrup.
Key ingredient in all those items.
Right.
That's heavily subsidized.
And that's been a deliberate government policy since the early 70s.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I hear what King says, and he says, quote, "We have to do something about this." Well, we have to do something about two anecdotes he's heard about one guy bailing himself out of jail with food stamps, and another person using food stamps to get a tattoo. That's a major problem that requires a $16 billion cut to a program.
I think that Steve King has discovered that there might be an underground economy in the United States.
Well, on that note too, it used to be I think the stat is 3.8. Yes, 3.8 cents. 2 decades ago, 3.8 cents out of every food stamp dollar spent was dealt with fraudulently. I mean, even that's not bad. If your rate of abuse in a program like this is less than 10%, that's pretty good. It was 3.8. Now it's 1%. 1 cent out of every dollar spent in the food stamp program is subject to some kind of fraud.
But the same urban legends continue to follow the food stamp program.
And it was interesting to me to notice that the 4 people who were profiled in the register who use food stamps, one of them said, honestly, I really don't like it. This gal said, she's 23. I feel like it enables people. Well, yeah. I mean, it should enable you to be able to continue to feed your family. It should enable you to be able to, ideally continue your education, work toward a better job. I mean, over half the people on the food stamp program are kids. I just really...
Well, and that's something I've always wanted to raise with folks, that the welfare structure as a whole, the entitlement structure as a whole, disproportionately helps women and children. So what does it mean when fellows like Steve King, and the operative word is fellows, guys, go out of their way to beat up on the welfare folks, knowing that it's a disproportional benefit to women and children in poverty.
Yeah, well,
it's a form of abuse towards women and children.
I do think it's interesting that once you put a human face on the problem, once you understand who that person is who is using the food stamp program, then it becomes really hard to look them in the eye and say, no, you don't deserve that. Or, yeah, I'm going to cut $16 billion. There was a really a great little video sent to me it involves acting, but I think it's worth taking a look at least the first few minutes of this video. Maddie, would you run that for us?
It's a typical day at Matson's Market in Burlington Township, New Jersey. Shoppers line up to pay for their groceries.
I think those are on sale too.
Only on this day,
EBT.
I'm sorry?
EBT.
Oh, food stamps? Okay.
one shopper is coming up short.
It says insufficient funds.
It says what?
Insufficient funds.
This could be a scene playing out in your own hometown grocery store.
I'm a single parent and I have 4 kids.
A mother or father struggling to feed their family. With food stamp usage up 20% from last year, with a striking 1 in 8 Americans needing assistance, we wanted to see how fellow shoppers might react to someone in need.
I'm gonna try it again.
So we rigged these cameras inside the store to capture these women, all actors we've hired.
I had $50 on my card.
Along with the cashier, she's part of our team too.
You don't have enough on there.
Take off the baby food.
There's no way. I have no money on my card. Can we put this back? Okay.
At the cash register, our first actor tries to check out.
This has never happened before.
How much does she need?
16.
In only a matter of minutes,
No, please.
Thank you.
help from not just one, but two generous
You
strangers.
wanted this back on?
Go ahead, I'll pay for it. That's okay.
You'll pay for the baby food.
Minutes later, when our actor's food stamp card is denied again,
That's all right. Give it to her. Give it to her.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
it seems like everyone in this small town store wants to help.
Okay.
Until our actor steps into that checkout line one more time.
This never happened to me before.
This man listens, appearing sympathetic to our actor in distress.
I don't have any cash.
But then, out of nowhere, watch this man. He counts just enough money to cover his own groceries. And then he offers the rest to our actor.
I'm so embarrassed.
I would do it if I had more cash.
I understand. I'm lucky to have a job still, so.
It's time to meet this good Samaritan.
Doesn't that make you feel good, Ron? I mean,
Yeah.
I really, Maureen McHugh with Physicians for Social Responsibility sent me that clip, and it was heartwarming that's been my experience with people in general, that when they are confronted by human need directly, personally, with a face on it, they rise to the occasion.
Well, yeah, but you don't want to push that too far because people have their own problems too.
Sure.
So they will do it. They will pitch it in a situation, but will they do it every time? I mean, when you see a homeless person, do you? Actually, I don't want to say you, Ed, because that's gotten me into trouble before. But does the average person, when they see a homeless person on the street, do they help out every time?
No, for sure. But I guess my point is that if we could start getting our Congress critters to personalize this issue,
Ed, this is the thing. The political system in this country is wholly owned and operated by people who have no concept of what food stamps even are. They don't even know anyone who knows anyone who uses food stamps. They are entirely insulated and isolated from the problem, but they're the ones running the political system. Yeah. So that is why you have floated as a great idea. We need to cut down on all this horrible waste and all these people abusing the system. Well, the people who control the system, they know about abusing the system because they do it themselves.
Right.
So they figure, well, this is something we can get involved in, and that's the basis. The food stamp program traditionally has been a bipartisan program.
Yeah.
It is Bob Dole and George McGovern working together.
Well, and the defeat of the Farm Bill was based on bipartisan opposition to the $2 billion cut in the House. And again, my point is, and then we've got Steve King, who wants to cut it by 8 times that amount.
Because in Western Iowa, those small town grocery stores and convenience stores, they need to make less money than they are now.
Your story, your take on the store clerk who is opposed to people coming in and using food stamps for something other than basics. It's a good point, because that person themselves probably earning minimum wage.
And the fact that we subsidize high fructose corn syrup in this country.
Right. Hey, we've got to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to change subjects here. We're going to talk about breastfeeding. Yes, 2 guys talking about breastfeeding. There's an event coming up that is of interest, I think, to people who are concerned about constituency groups that are misunderstood, maligned, and treated unfairly. Yeah, it's not just the poor. It's not just folks on food stamps. It's moms who would like the opportunity, the reasonable opportunity to breastfeed in public. And there's a really good video we want to share from a gal in England, actually, and also talk about an event coming up. I would love to get Steve King's take on this as well. Maybe he'd like to criminalize that activity. I don't know. I mean, it almost seems to be consistent with some of his other crazy positions. Okay, I do want to take a second to thank all of our sponsors, especially the Great March for Climate Action, Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility, and the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club. And thanks to Gateway Marketing Cafe for sponsoring this segment of our show. Gateway's a great place, Ron. I know you go there once in a while. Yeah, it's What did I have from there yesterday?
I will. If anyone wants to invite me to Gateway for a breakfast, I'll be there. Love their breakfast.
I have a feeling you'd probably go there for lunch or supper as well.
I haven't been able to as often as I like to yet, but I do love breakfast at Gateway.
Now, we don't have to treat you. We can invite you, but it would be a Dutch treat.
Oh, I'm sad now.
Okay, right. Manny, don't ever invite this guy out for breakfast. He'll make you pay. Anyway, I want to thank some of my other supporters as well. The Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit coming up in November. Also, Community CPA and Associates. And don't forget Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering in Beaverdale. Great patio seating and also seating on the sidewalk as well for taking advantage of this fantastic weather we are having. Okay, we'll be back in a few minutes. Ron and I discussing public breastfeeding.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of WebcastOneLive.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait. Howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back to the Fallon Forum. Ron Yarnell and myself here in the studio today. We have been discussing the food stamp program and how Steve King just can't get enough of maligning the poor. There are plenty of other constituency groups, of course, that people like to dislike, like to hate even. One of them has been historically the gay and lesbian community. I'm really thrilled to see that changing, by the way. The polling is just continuously moving in the right direction on this. More and more people saying, hey, I'm cool with gay marriage. I mean, Steve King, of course, and some folks like that, Bob Vanderplatz, Chuck Hurley, they'll never come around on it. They'll take their anti-gay bias to the grave, but it is exciting to see some movement in the right direction on that issue. Here's an issue we could sure use some movement on, Ron. Public breastfeeding. I know this is tough. I mean, anytime two dudes sitting in a studio say the word breast, you probably assume they're sweating a little bit. They're nervous. It's just the kind of culture we've grown up in where you're not supposed to talk about this stuff, let alone display it in public.
Well, I think that the female breast in Western culture anyway only became an object of erotic desire. Maybe the 18th century, something like that. Before that, it was a very common utilitarian understanding. I mean, that's how mothers fed their children. In the Middle Ages, there's any number of pictures of artwork of the Blessed Virgin Mary breastfeeding Jesus.
We even have a statue here at the Iowa State Capitol that Boy Scouts like to snicker at, but it's a statue of the depicting the fertility and generosity of the land.
Watch your hands there.
Well, I'm just trying to. It's
an object. It's become an object of humor and
it shouldn't be. That's because that's where we're at as a society. But so, what happened in the 1800s, in your opinion, that caused that shift?
I don't. Maybe it wasn't as necessary as it was before. I don't know, but I do know that 21st century Americans, when they think of the human female breast, they think of it nearly entirely in sexual erotic terms. I'd be surprised if we walked out here and we interviewed people, we interviewed guys, what's the female breast for? I'd wonder how long we'd get before someone would say it's for feeding babies.
You think it would take a while?
Yeah, I think it would take a while.
Probably, yeah. Unfortunately, well, we've got a ways to go, and it's not just unfortunate too. It's problematic. I mean, there are women who get arrested for breastfeeding in public. There are women who are embarrassed, humiliated. There's an event coming up in Des Moines I want to talk about. It's in conjunction with a global effort, an annual global movement. But I want to share this video. You know, I like to tease the British. Well, there's some good stuff coming out of England, including this young poet, Holly McNish, who has this great video that she's put together on why our attitude toward breastfeeding is all out of sync.
It's a British world. We just live in it.
Maddie, let's hit that clip.
I could understand the reasons. They said there might be a man or a nervous child seeing this small piece of flesh that they weren't quite expecting. So I whispered and tiptoed with nervous discretion. But after 6 months of her life sat sitting on lids, sipping on milk, nostrils sniffing on piss, trying not to bang her head on toilet roll dispensers, I wonder whether these public loo feeds offend her. 'Cause I'm getting tired of discretion and being polite. As my baby's first sips are drown-drenched in shite, I spent the first feeding months of her beautiful life feeling nervous and awkward and wanting everything right. Surrounded by family till I stepped out the house. It took me 8 weeks to get the confidence to go into town. Now the comments around me cut like a knife as I rush into toilet cubicles feeling nothing like nice. Because I'm giving her milk that's not in a bottle. Wishing the cocaine generation white powder would topple. I see pyramid sales pictures across our green globe and female breasts banned, unless they're out just for show. And the more I go out, the more I can't stand it. I walk into town, feel I'm surrounded by bandits, 'cause in this country of billboards covered in tits and family newsagent magazines full of it. W.H. Smith top shelves out for men, why don't you complain about them then? In this country of billboards covered in tits and family newsagent magazines full of it. W.H. Smith top shelves out for men, I'm getting embarrassed in case a small flash of flesh might offend. And I'm not trying to...
No, keep going, Maddie, please.
Want to make a show. But when I'm told I'd be better just staying at home, and when another friend I know is thrown off a bus, and another mother told to get out of a pub, even my grandma said maybe I was sexing it up. And I'm sure the milk makers love all this fuss, all the cussing and worry and looks of disgust as another mother turns from nipples to powder, ashamed or embarrassed by the comments around her, and as I hold her head up and pull my cardi across and she sips on that liquor made by everyone's God, I think for God's sake Jesus drank it. So did Siddhartha, Muhammad and Moses and both of their fathers, Ganesh and Shiva and Brigid and Buddha, and I'm sure they weren't doing it sniffing on piss as their mothers sat embarrassed on cold toilet lids in a country of billboards covered in tits, in a country of low cut tops, cleavage and skin, in a country of cloth bags and recycling bins. And as I desperately try to take all of this in, I hold her head up. I can't get my head round the anger towards us and not to the sound of lorries offloading formula milk into countries where water runs dripping in filth, in towns where breasts are oases of life, now dried up in 2-for-1 offers, enticed by labels and logos and gold standard rights, claiming breast milk is healthier, powdered and white, packaged and branded and sold at a price so that nothing is free in this money-fueled life, which is fine if you need it or prefer to use bottles where water is clean and bacteria boiled. But in towns where they drown in pollution and sewage, bottled kids die, and they knew that they'd do it. In towns where pennies are savoured like sweets, we're now paying for one thing that's always been free. In towns empty of hospital beds, babies die, diarrhea fueled that breast milk would end, so no more will I sit on these cold toilet lids. No matter how embarrassed I feel as she sips. 'Cause in this country of billboards covered in tits, I think we should try to get used to this.
I think that's a pretty powerful statement, Ron.
Well, she's talking about the United Kingdom, but she could just as soon be talking about the United States.
Sure, and she's talking about
because she talks about how, and this is true. We are awash with pornography, even on the supermarket magazine line,
right?
That feature the female breast. But for some strange reason, the natural use of the female breast is disparaged and discouraged and really kind of like indicates a messed up society. I would, to use like sociological kind of language, I think it's kind of indicative of being in the patriarchal society, where guys define the female body, what it's good for, what it's not good for, and that becomes law. And so guys in our society, they have one understanding of the human female breast, and everything has to fall into that.
Yeah. And you know, the other point she makes that I think is very, very important. It's not just that. It's not just male societal, you know, preferences and how they choose to define, how we choose to define the function of the female breast. It's also the money being made by these big corporations that are indifferent to the suffering, the death, the disease caused in other countries where, again, they don't have access to clean water, where they don't have a $4 million nitrate treatment system like we do here in Des Moines, where, you know, kids die because their moms have been convinced that the formula is superior to what they produce naturally. I mean, and that is the most objectionable element of this problem, is the extent to which greed drives this issue. And,
well, you know, it's as the speaker was saying. It's about making money. Female body parts are maybe the leading advertising feature that people use to make money. It just that, and I don't know what else. But you know, and it's all about making money. And whatever happens in the real world, whatever happens with real people, is irrelevant, because the goal is to make as much money as you can for your shareholders.
Well, I'm glad that mothers are fighting this battle. I hope it is appreciated that there are at least two male allies talking about this in the studio.
You know what? As the woman alluded, if it's good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. With Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad. Yeah. Well, there's an event. It's a global event. It's called the Big Latch On, which I love that name, and it happens every year across the world. There were, and it's simultaneously. I can't remember how many countries now. It started in New Zealand, but there are over 8,000. Last year, there were over 8,000 women breastfeeding in public at this time. And that will be here in Des Moines. In Des Moines, it's going to be August 3rd at 10:30 at the Sculpture Park. And I'm not quite sure how many people they expect to show up, but the idea is that women will be breastfeeding in public at 10:30 a.m. on a Saturday morning at the Sculpture Garden to help begin to normalize this totally natural, reasonable function that has become so disparaged in so many ways.
What do you think the response will be of our governor, for example, or even the mayor or whoever, the authorities? Will they?
I think you'll get a very different response from Frank County than you might get from Terry Branstad. Okay. Maybe Branstad will find a way not to respond at all. I think Frank's cool.
I think that Governor Branstad, he's I think a sufficiently experienced political official that he probably knows enough just to stand back from this.
Yeah, who doesn't know any better is Steve King, and I'd love to know what Steve King would have to say about this. Maybe it's another natural function he'd like to criminalize,
or you know, this is not in his constituency, so maybe give Tom Latham a call.
Yeah, not a bad idea. Anyway, that's the Big Latch On coming up Saturday, August 3rd at the Sculpture Park in Des Moines. Where women who are breastfeeding are invited to come and do that publicly as part of a global movement again, across the world that weekend. There will be, last year, again, over 8,000 women breastfeeding to, again, kind of help normalize what should be very normal. Thank you, Ron. We're going to switch gears here. We're going to talk about the ways in which Verizon, U.S. Cellular, other companies are making money off the government, meaning off the taxpayers, compliments of the increased national security agencies spying
and
on the American people.
How Steve King is outraged and he's going to work to reduce that waste.
You know, I haven't heard him mention that. Isn't that funny? Yeah. Well, I do want to thank the $1 Million Marathon for sponsoring this segment of our show and remind people that coming up on July 16th here in Des Moines, big event to celebrate the marathons coming through Des Moines. Again, this started on the West Coast. Dr. Dick Deming, our own Dr. Dick Deming, kicked off the first leg. 160 legs later, they will arrive on the Atlantic Ocean in Delaware. But this coming week, July 16th, a big event right downtown at, I believe, at 13th and Locust again, to celebrate its coming through Des Moines. This is a project of Above and Beyond Cancer, and the money being raised will be used for cancer research. I do want to thank all of my other supporters and sponsors as well, including the Fighting Burrito, where I'm going to have lunch today. Fighting Burrito is at 13th and Locust, also in Ames on Welch Ave. I also want to thank Story County Veterinary Clinic and S&P Piano. If you need a piano moved or pet serviced, I've got information about how to contact great people who are doing good work on both those fronts on my website, fallonforum.com. When we come back in just 2 minutes, we'll talk with Ben Stone with the American Civil Liberties Union about this situation with phone companies making money off the taxpayers to basically comply with NSA rules on how to extract information from the American public.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. The dawn of a new era begins. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Thank you, Max Wellman, for bringing us back to our conversation. Before we wrap up the show today, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Branstad Speedgate situation. But first, we're going to switch gears and talk about government snooping, which apparently is turning a pretty nice profit for a handful of companies. And joining me in this conversation, along with Ron Yarnell, still in the studio with me. I cannot get rid of this guy. Maddie, can you call the authorities and have Ron forcibly removed from the studio, please? She's on it. Okay, good. Welcoming Ben Stone with the ACLU to the show. Hello, Ben.
Good afternoon, Ed.
Yeah, we've got Ron Yarnell in the studio as well here. Ron's a big fan of government spying. I know you are as well. Kidding, of course. This is new information to me. I had not known that phone companies were making so much money off the taxpayers for complying with the new regulations on surveillance.
Well, yeah, and I think we should point out we're referencing a story on the back page of the Des Moines Register today that cites some ACLU staff people talking about this issue, and it surprises me too. I mean, I guess I wouldn't say I didn't know it, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
We know how this country has developed in the last 50 years, going clear back to Eisenhower warning us in his departing address as president that there was a military industrial complex, and he actually wanted to say a military congressional industrial complex, but his speechwriters told him to take out congressional.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And, all he was saying is that, there are economic players that are so powerful in America that they are going to dictate what we do and what we spend our money on and what laws we pass. And, it's gone way beyond the defense contractors and, Boeing and all the others. Now you've got, starting with the defense, we've seen the drone industry is exploding. You probably read that the immigration bill that passed the Senate is loaded with millions of dollars of guaranteed money for one specific company. It's in the bill.
Right.
For drones, for fencing, for hiring people, for building the detention facility. And then you've got the prison industrial complex, which, if you go back 30 or 40 years ago, there was not a single private prison in America.
Yeah, and that number is changing quite a bit.
Now they're all over the country. There's none in Iowa.
Right, and the percentage of Americans being incarcerated is on the increase as well. But let's get back on the main point here. And I look at the data. AT&T they collect a $325 activation fee for each wiretap. So they're tapping your ACLU phone. Presumably they are, right?
Yeah.
So to set that up, they get $325. I mean, I really don't know what's involved in setting up a wiretap. Maybe my guess is somebody's getting really good money on this, and then they charge $10 a day to maintain it. But here's what fascinates me. You would think, okay, $325 for a wiretap, maybe that's a pretty going rate with the government. Apparently not. U.S. Cellular charges only $250. But how about Verizon? I mean, Verizon bills the government, aka you and me, the taxpayers, $775 for the first month, and then $500 for each month after that. So that's, I mean, they're like getting making a killing on this. I'm shocked that AT&T and US Cellular aren't demanding higher fees to be comparable to what Verizon's getting. And then, of course, Facebook doesn't charge at all. Microsoft, Yahoo, and Google won't tell us how much they charge. The thing is fascinating to me on a number of levels. And one is just that how can there be those disparities? And how can the government let these corporations get away with that? I guess maybe because they're forcing them to do this surveillance stuff in the first place, they feel some guilt, and don't mind being bilked. I don't know. I can't wrap my mind around it entirely.
Well, I guess I would observe that it really looks a lot like the so-called budget hawks in our United States Congress, who never seem to raise a finger to stop overpayment to people that they like. I mean, let's get down to basic kind of moral judgment. When there's programs that go to low-income people or government workers, the conservatives that say they're budget hawks are all over it. They want to cut everything. But when you start two wars,
right, and
you're giving, I mean, didn't they have like, $500 million in cash that disappeared in Iraq? You look at the defense.
Not even accounted for. No sign of it. Yeah.
What you basically got. I mean, I've always thought that the Republican Party largely operates the same way that the Democratic Party does, in that they help provide funds to the people that vote for them. In this context, you're looking at the government giving money to contractors that run phone companies, that run intelligence, the contractors that Edward Snowden worked for, and all those groups. And so the government's really just providing, they don't care. Hey, give too much money to my friends that ultimately help me fund my campaign.
Yeah.
And they just don't care. I mean, and part of it's kind of secret, that nobody knows about, the media don't talk about it. This is an unusual story.
Yeah, and I wonder now that this information is out, do you suspect we might see some congressional backlash, some attempts to try to establish some accountability, maybe some hearings on why this is even needed?
I'm sure there'll be attempts, but look at, we're talking about the United States Congress in 2013. It can't do anything because the 60 Tea Party people in the House can stop the government from doing anything different. They can't make new changes, but they can stop things. And, they can probably make it so that if there's an attempt to rein in this, because, they're not really accountable. They're in seats that they will never lose until the next census and redistricting occurs.
Right.
They're locked in. They don't care. They can do anything they want, and their only concern is that they're not conservative enough.
Well, yeah, apparently that's the case with the food stamp cuts. I mean, I thought it was bad enough that the Senate cut $400 million, and then of course the House cuts $2 billion. Steve King wants to cut $16 billion.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're backtracking here a bit, but I don't know where this goes from here. I mean, I really don't. I mean, this is fascinating information to me.
I think
disturbing.
What your listeners and viewers should do is when they communicate with their legislators and their congressional representatives about the NSA spying and that's not acceptable, they need to make them accountable. They also need to mention that, by the way, I resent being taxed to enrich these phone companies.
Yeah.
Who are charging ridiculous fees, and I want you to make an effort to standardize and reduce the cost to the taxpayer.
Yeah, we're not only being taxed to allow ourselves to be spied on. We're helping a phone company make a ton of money doing it.
Exactly.
Overall, I think the communications industry has better lobbying groups than Snap clients do.
You think so? I think the food stamp lobby needs to strengthen its.
I think they need to do something to get back in the game.
Good observation, Ron.
Ben, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us.
Thanks for contacting us. We're the ACLU's on the case.
All right. Well, good. You always are. You're always doing good work.
Yeah, we're keeping busy these days.
Oh, I'm sure you are. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Ben. Ben Stone, folks, with the American Civil Liberties Union here in Iowa. I want to thank the Des Moines Metro Opera for sponsoring this segment of our show. Ronnie, are you an opera guy?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay. Have you been?
I have never been to the opera, but I do listen to opera.
Good stuff.
And I admired the Des Moines opera display that they had out here in the skywalk.
Yeah. I believe this is the last week. So again, Romeo and Juliet, Peter Graham's Electra, Get Thee to Simpson.
I'm kind of a Puccini guy.
Okay, well, don't limit yourself too much.
I'm not, but Puccini basically is where I'm at.
All right. Well, we'll have to meet you where you're at. Anyway, this is their last week of performances, folks, in Indianola, so do check them out, the Des Moines Metro Opera. I also want to thank some of my other business allies, the Ritual Cafe at 13th and Locust. Again, coffee, tea, smoothies, paninis, but also excellent music opportunities, too, on Fridays and Saturdays, sometimes on other nights as well. Sergeant's Garage. I want to thank Graham Gormley with Sergeant's Garage at 6th and College. I've been servicing my vehicles for 4 generations. And I also want to remind you about my anchor business supporter, Gateway Marketing Cafe at 20th and Woodland. Please support the people that make this show possible. Otherwise, Ron and I will have to spend all our money at them. And we have limited resources.
Ed, is that the same car through all 4 of those generations?
No, four different. When I say generations, I mean car generations, not human generations.
I know you pride yourself on how little you use your car.
No, I have. I use it so little. This spring, I went out there and there was a maple tree growing from the windshield, which I thought was pretty cool. Anyway, all right. Hey, when we come back, we're going to talk Governor Branstad. I want to get your take on Speedgate, Ron. What's going on with the governor?
Branstad gets American Graffiti. Dragging it out.
All right. We're going to talk about that when we come back in just a minute. Actually, 2 minutes.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershot.
I am administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. But is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed rider, it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
That's Mary McAdams, and we're back to the final segment of our conversation here today on the Fallon Forum. Ron Yarnell sticking around for the full hour because he likes abuse.
No, I don't.
No? All right. Well,
that's the Cubs.
Oh, so, well, yeah, you got to. Well, if you wanted to learn abuse, you could. Yeah, I mean, ouch, Cubs fans. I mean, you know, I'm a little bit of a Cubs fan, but it's hard to be a fan of something that just will never happen. You know. I mean, I'm excited by Continental Drift too. You know, Continental Drift is pretty cool when you think about it. I could be a fan of that, but the scope of time is so unfathomable that there's no point. Just like with the Cubs.
My daughter is, I think, possibly evolving into a Cubs fan, and I don't know how to stop it because we do go out to Principal Park a lot to see the iCubs, and I'm afraid that might translate into the big club.
I mean, is there really any chance of the Cubs ever winning the World Series in this century? I mean, maybe the 22nd century.
You know, there's another club we won't mention, but from someone's hometown that managed to get it done a few years ago.
Twice now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go Red Sox. Hey, let's talk about something more important than sports. Governor Branstad speeding like a maniac. Anyway, I think this Speedgate thing is huge. I think even before others were saying that, I was thinking this is huge because it's not just illegal and an indication of the elitism that this guy operates with. It connects with so many other things that people are maybe not talking about, but now they think about it. That's my take on it, Ron.
You know, a question that I have, and I'm not asking this in a kind of like an accusatory kind of manner, but it is an interesting question, Ed. Why do you think Governor Branstad is so popular? What's the mojo he has as a successful politician? I mean, isn't he like the longest-serving Iowa governor at this point?
Oh, yeah, hands down. And he will be the longest-serving American governor ever if he serves half of his next term. Should he run again? Should he win again?
So what's his mojo? What does he
He's
have?
a tenacious campaigner. He goes out there, he smiles, he kisses the baby, he cuts the ribbon, he says something nice to you. I mean, he's a good glad-hander.
He doesn't seem to be much of a convinced ideological warrior. He seems to be more of a party kind of guy.
I think he's become more ideological.
Well, only in the sense that that's where the party's at, but he doesn't. He's done some things that correspond with the National Party, but basically he just seems to be content to be governor, and he's actually kind of dull. And maybe people like that.
He is. He's not. He's certainly. Yeah. I mean, he's probably even more dull than Chuck Grassley. But that's not necessarily a bad thing to be. That's one of the things that doesn't bother me about him.
Maybe that's the key to his success, and that he's a fairly dull official. He doesn't grandstand. He just is perceived as doing his job and doing it.
But the problem is the job he's doing is horrible, and it is so much worse than the job he did or didn't do back in the 90s. I mean, he was really kind of non-existent at the State House in the 90s. And now he's working hard on policies, and they're all in the wrong direction.
Well, what's his motivation? Does he consider this a legacy kind of thing? Is he convinced?
I think he might be there. I think this is what he's focused on now is legacy. Not only, I mean, the most central element to his legacy, if he should win again, is the longest standing governor in U.S. history. Right. But he's trying to carve out a legacy on education, on economic development, on being a prudent fiscal manager. But he is, I think he's gotten, I mean, really, when you're in office that long, I mean, most folks believe in term limits. I mean, we have term limits for the president. Many states have them for governor. Many states have them for the state legislature.
I think
we believe in that sort of thing.
If you ask most of the people who voted for Governor Branstad, they believe in term limits.
Probably, yeah. Most of his support, I'll bet a vast majority of his supporters believe in term limits.
But then this issue of speeding, and I guess the most serious part of it is the censure that was it a state trooper?
No, it was a DCI, Department of Criminal Investigation, 25-year a 25-year veteran with that department who tried to get the state patrol to catch up with the vehicle and do something about it.
Yeah, I think he's under suspension.
And he could lose his job.
Okay, so that, I mean, that's not. I don't know if that's going to hurt Governor Branstad in the re-election. But on the other hand, is that something? Is that indicative of what happens when you've been governor for 20 years?
Well, maybe. I mean,
how dare you? How dare you say something about me? Because if I'm going 90 miles an hour down the highway, it's not like anyone else. I have important business to accomplish.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm better than you. What I'm doing matters more. And you know what? We can't even get from him where he was going. What was he doing? Why was this so important? Was there a fire somewhere? Was there a funeral to go to? I mean, was it a fundraiser? Who knows?
Is this also a sore spot with Governor Branstad? Because if I do not err, long time ago, his son got in trouble for a traffic-related incident.
That remains probably the most offensive example of political privilege in this state I've ever seen, and it bothered me. Again, we're just in case folks have forgotten, Eric Branstad was out on, I think, Highway 141, perhaps, I believe just west of Des Moines here, and was speeding, and had been drinking, and hit and killed two older people. Killed them. And now, I mean, that's vehicular manslaughter by any stretch of the imagination. And you and I, our son or daughter would be in prison probably for life, or at least for a big
very
chunk
long
of it.
Time.
This kid, Branstad's kid, got off with a slap on not even a slap on the wrist. Got off with a $15 fine per body. Per victim. I mean, when I was door knocking, I ran into the grandkids of the people who were killed. They were so bitter. They felt like that the lives of two of the dearest people in their world who had been taken in this reckless, ruthless manner. I'm going to call it ruthless. When you make the decision to speed and drink and drive, there's something wrong there. And for Eric Branstad to get away with this, and for Governor Branstad to think that there was somehow no problem with that, it just shows to me a type of person that I don't understand. I mean, I think if more people thought about
I understand why a father who's in a position of power protects his kid.
Yeah, but then on the other hand, look what he does. He takes an executive order that Vilsack established, giving people getting out of prison a chance to reintegrate into society by becoming active voters, and he ruins that. He takes that away. I mean, that was helping 50,000 people. You know, if one of those who could have been his son, but no, because of preferential treatment, because he was the son of the emperor, got a slap on the wrist.
Because I'm sure Eric Branstad, you don't want to ruin this bright young lad's future, and yada yada yada.
Right. Well, and how many other bright young futures have been ruined for one reason or another?
Unfortunately, it's the oldest story in the world. It's might makes right, and if you're in a certain set, you get away with stuff.
But I don't think Iowans don't want they don't want elected officials who abuse their positions of power. And Branstad has done that so often.
That leads me back to my point, because Governor Branstad is a very popular governor. I don't know if the upcoming election will be much of a challenge for him.
I'm starting to think it might be. I've always thought, no, there's no way he can be beaten. Now I am changing my mind on that.
And I know my fellow Iowans are very much into morality and fairness and you know, equal consideration. So I don't really understand what Governor Branstad's mojo is, that on occasion this kind of stuff leaks out, but it doesn't seem to have much electoral fallout. Yeah. We'll see. I mean, we'll see.
And you know, at some point, you know, that ship comes in and you no longer are insulated from the electoral fallout, as you call it, from your bad behavior.
I think if increasingly the governor is perceived as aloof and in his own little world of privilege, and in Iowa, I think that hurts you.
How can he not be seen as being aloof and in his own little world of privilege? I mean, just look at some of the stuff. All right, double standards on so many things. He's got a personal chef. He's got a private chef, and yet last year he vetoes a small appropriation for the food banks. And I think one reason he signed the appropriation for the food banks this year is he got so much flack for that. I mean, he also double dips on his pension. He gets 2 pensions from the taxpayers, and yet he vetoes funds that would restore pensions for state employees this past year.
I know, Ed, that you've been talking to the prospective opponents to the governor and the election. Are they going to pursue that? Are they going to describe the governor as an elitist and as a person who lives in a
I don't know.
Cocoon?
I hope they do. I mean, I really hope they do.
Because I think that's something that would most resonate as inappropriate to the average Iowa voter.
Yeah,
I mean,
I do too.
We're a very egalitarian culture in this state.
I hope Governor Branstad doesn't run again. I hope that if he does, he gets a primary challenger. I think that's probably a real long shot. But I hope whoever is running against him, Republican, Democrat, Independent, is connecting the dots between his clear actions demonstrating his sense of privilege and the policies that he enacts.
Because I don't see him as an ideological warrior. And if he, to the extent he's become one, that might be to fend off folks to the right in his party. Is there, to your knowledge, someone rising from within the Republican Party to take on that challenge?
No, unfortunately, and I wish we'd have a Bob Ray type Republican rising to do that. But again, that party is a mess. But we're out of time, Ron.
Oh.
Once we start talking about the mess that the Republican Party is, we'd have to start talking about what a mess the Democratic Party is.
And then we're here all day.
And then we're here all day. Ron Yarnell, folks, joining me on Thursdays oftentimes for the conversation. Always appreciate your input, Ron.
Thanks a lot, Ed.
Go Red Sox.
Okay.
All right. I want to thank the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit for sponsoring this segment of our show. Great opportunity, folks, November 9th at Drake University to learn how to start, nurture, and grow your small business, your dream. I also want to thank a couple of our Newton-based business supporters, Diana's Wedding Cakes and Dan Kelly's Real Estate Business. I want to thank Leonard Tinker Heating and Cooling, and also one of my fantastic restaurant clients, Hawk Restaurant. That's H-O-Q. Hawk Restaurant in the East Village at East 5th and Walnut. 90% of the food they serve is coming from local farms and local producers. Okay, again, thanks to my nonprofit allies, the folks from those groups that make this show possible as well, the Great March for Climate Action, the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club, and Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility. Thank you, Maddie Kane, my producer, and thanks to Webcast One Live. I almost thought I think I was always going to pull a Daffy Duck there for a second. Webcast One Live for providing the studio. I'll be back tomorrow.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.